Coming to you live from the shadow of the big house, it's IT4U. Tips and tricks on ITS tools, products, services, and more with your host, Gene Mackey. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to IT4U. I'm your host, Gene Mackey. So these are interactive webinars brought to you by ITS. If you are having any audio or video problems, let us know in the chat pod. And if it's not on our end, we can offer some tips on how to fix it. If you're watching the YouTube recording of this, check the description, and there'll be a link to a Google Doc with all the live links. If you do need an accommodation to participate, just give us a little heads up. And today, I'm the presenter as well as the host, so we're going to go over some business objects, tips, and tricks. So without further ado, I want to just point out that if you're looking at the screen down at the bottom, you'll see there's a web link. If you click that, and then you can browse to it, those are the scenarios that I'm using today if you want to follow along. But if you don't, if you just want to get it later, I will send those out. Okay, here we go. I'm going to share my screen. So here I am in Business Objects. So I went to Applications, Web Intelligence, and if I'm going to create a new query, and what I'm doing, just so you know, is I'm actually using scenarios from an old instructor-led business objects class I used to teach that was really just about the tool. So I'm not addressing the data today. I'm just going to go through these scenarios and highlight some things that you might be aware of, some of them you might not, and in some cases it'll be a review. So I'm going to use a demo universe that everybody has access to. It's the ever-popular eFashion universe. How about that? So that's what I'm using. So if you want to play around on your own, you could do that. And it's simpler than our data warehouse data sets. But the other thing I want to point out is that if I go down to, like I'm in my favorites right now, but if I go down to folders, user shared, like I say, that's going away, but right now we still have it. The reason it's going away is because too many people put reports in there that they hadn't purged the data, so it's a problem with access and security. But under Mackie J, I've got a little folder under user shared called IT4U sample reports. So right now I'm using dress revenue, and later I'm going to use store revenue. So, but I'm going back to my documents, and I'm going to open up dress revenue. Now, when you first open a report, if you just do it by double-clicking the title, you're in reading mode. You can't really do all that much in reading mode, so of course you always want to go into design mode. So in design mode, I'm going to show you just a couple of things about prompts. So I'm going back to Edit Data Provider, right there. And that takes me into the Query panel. The annoying thing about the query panel is it's got this data preview thing, so if you were editing a really complicated query, you could do a little preview and see if you were on track. But usually we don't use it, so we just make it go away, and the annoying thing is that we can't make it go away for good without breaking something else. So there we go. Alright, so I've got color, so this is a bunch of stores, so the product lines, category, color, quantity sold. Just a reminder, if you're working on a query that somebody else created, if you click that, if you hover over category, I can see what is it. It's a character string. Where did it come from? It came from the product folder. And again, if I click it, it shows me where it came from, which can be very handy. Because generally when you're making changes to queries, you want to work close. So if you're editing something, you want to, generally if you're going to pull in another object, you want to pull from the same folder. And in another time we'll talk about the data dictionaries and how they let us know how the data is structured, because in the case of the data warehouse, those data sets are pretty complicated. And what does this mean? Like that little blue thingy, it means it's a dimension object, which is character, numeric, or date. Believe it or not, that's a little ruler, that little orange thingy. It's a measure object, so it's a calculation, and how it calculates changes. It looks at these dimension objects on how it's going to calculate. So for quantity sold, when I run this, it's going to look at, well, for these lines and these categories and these colors, what's the quantity of products that I sold. If I take one of them out, it's going to calculate differently. What else about that? I guess that's the main thing. And so I've got a couple of query filters. So the query filters, there's two kinds of filters in BusinessObjects: query filters and report filters. If you put in a query filter, it's going to limit the data that's returned in your query. We're going to look at report filters later. Those can be applied and taken off easily. You can hide certain data and then you can bring it back. But if you put a query filter, like whatever colors I select here, it's only going to bring in those colors. Now we're going to look at how you might change your prompt order, your query filter order. It looks like you can do it right here, but you know what? It's kind of buggy when you do it there. It doesn't work that well. So instead, I'm going to talk to the hand. See the little hand here, query properties, and this is where I can actually change the order. I can change other things too. Do I want to retrieve duplicate rows? Do I want to allow other users to edit? Do I want to have a maximum number of rows retrieved? But right now, all I'm doing is just changing the order. Did that work? I think so. Color, year, color, year. No, it didn't. But does it change it when I actually run it? See, that's the important thing. So let me go ahead and run it. Yeah, it did change it. Cool. So, when I did the query filter for year, I used equal to. What does that mean? It means I can only enter a single value. So if I type in another value, like 2006, it replaces 2005. So again, if you're creating queries for others to use and you only want them to pick one value, you use equal to. This I've got, for color, I've got in list, so I can have multiple. So let's see, I want to get rid of that. I can refresh values here. If I click here and I hit P, it takes me to paprika. If I hit PO, it takes me to pomegranate. So that's helpful when you have a long list of values. If you don't see the values you're expecting to see, you can always refresh. You can search down here. Right, it brings up everything that's gray, and then if I just want to go back to that, I can refresh. So that's basically all I wanted to say on that one. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh. Now I'm going to go back. I'm going to look at the order of my filters when I nest them. So I'm going to go back to Edit Data Provider. Get rid of Data Preview again. Yes, that is annoying, and yes, we've tried to make it go away for good, but... Alright, so I'm going to get rid of color. So a couple ways I can do that. I can just click it and click Remove. And then I'm going to bring in Category, in List, what do I got here? Belts, Bags, Wallets. I'm going to pick from a list. Oops, I didn't want that one. Belts, Bags, Wallets. And then I've got lines. And again, I can pull lines from over here, or I can pull, if it's in Result Objects, I can pull it down. So I've got lines equal to, because I only want one. And let's say, if I knew exactly how it was in the system, I could type it, but it's real picky. So, you know, if you look at the logic of what I'm asking for, I'm going to have a problem when I run this query. The way it is now, I'm not going to get any data. Can anybody tell me why? Oh, I know it's still early. No value for year. Good thought, but it's a year is a prompt, so it's actually going to ask me for a value for year when I run it, and I'll put in a value. The reason I'm not going to, that's okay. Like I say, it's still very early. Yes, Cindy's right. A category, belts, bags, wallets, and lines, dresses, those are mutually exclusive. So I'm going to change this to a viable query. So right over here, add a nested filter. So I'm going to drag that over here. Well, actually, I just clicked it. And this is a little tricky, but you can see you hate business objects? Oh my God, you've hurt my feelings. You hate business objects. Can I do an in-person class? I don't know, maybe. But you know what? When I used to do in-person classes, the trick is that with business objects, everybody wants their own data, and everybody's using different data. They want to know how to use the tool with the data, and so that would be classes. Anyway, I'll address that later, and I'm very sorry that you hate business objects. It's just... maybe you'll like it better by the end today. Now, do you see what I've done? I added a nested query. Now, this is viable. Why is it viable? Because I'm saying year equal to whatever I say. Category is a list, belts, bags, wallets, and lines equal to, or lines is dresses. So one or both has to be true, but they don't both have to be true. Okay, so year is whatever I say, and one or both of those second, the nested ones, have to be true. All right, let me do that one more time. I could change it to and by double clicking. I could get rid of it. I don't know, can I get rid of it? No, that got rid of the whole thing. Lines in list, values from list, belt bag wallets, didn't want that one. Lines equal to dresses. Okay, so I'm going to do it one more time just to make sure it sticks here. Add a nested filter, and then I take lines and drag it here, and then I take category and yeah, so you just sort of had to pay attention to where the red line was. All right, I'm going to go ahead and run this. Values for year, refresh values. So the reason I create a prompt is why? Because I want to change my mind. If I always want the same year, there's no reason to have a prompt. But if I'm going to choose different years, then it could be a prompt, and it's going to ask me every time. All right, I'm going to move on. I'm going to close this. I'll save it, close it. Now I'm going to open up a little number called store revenue. And let's see, what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to insert a sum. So again, I'm in reading mode. When I'm in reading mode, I can save it, I can refresh it, I can export it. I can't do a whole heck of a lot more, so I always want to get into design mode. Let me just point out a couple of the options with design mode. So over here I've got a document summary, and what is it? It's a web intelligence document. I created it. How long did it take to refresh it? The last time I refreshed it. Do I want it to refresh every time I open it? Do I want to put in a description? I can't put in the description right here. I'm typing, but nothing happens. If I want to put in a description, I have to go to Properties, Document, Edit Document Properties. And now I can put in a description. And so now if I go here, oh, there's a description. So here we'll take a look at this navigation map later. That's mostly useful when you create a sectioned report, which we're going to do. So if you have a whole lot of sections, like if I did a section on state, so I had a separate section for each state, I could quickly go to a particular state. Since I don't have a section, it's not terribly useful right now. Input controls, we're going to have Deb Lennington come back and explain input controls to us later in the summer. What were my values for the prompt? I had values for year. Available objects, this is always very useful. So if I got rid of lines for some reason, delete that. And then I'm like, I want lines again. I can go over here and bring it back. Now, when I'm bringing a column back, an object in the table, I have to pay attention because see what I got right now? It says drop here to insert a cell. If I move over a little more, it's covering this one, and it says drop here to replace. So if I drop here to replace it, it takes away city and adds lines. But I wanted city in there. So I gotta just do it so it's not covering that one, and it's going to actually add a column. If I don't feel like messing with that, I can always do a right click and insert a column, and then it's a little easier, you know, like if I got rid of city and I wanted to bring it back, it's a little easier to bring it back if you got a blank column. So available objects, and we're going to create a variable later, and that's where you would find variables that you had created. And then document structure. What's useful about that is, like, if I click on report, if I click on the header, it'll take me right to the header if I wanted to add something. The report name, if I wanted to change that. The footer. So all of these options are handy, and then I can just make it go away. What else am I going to do? Oh, so I've got a bunch of numbers here, and looks like I had already inserted a sum. Now, with the new business objects, you've got all these tabs. The tabs, it's not always obvious, like where you would go to add something, so I tend to use right-click a lot, which even if you're on a Mac, you can still simulate a right-click. So I'm going to do a right-click on any data cell. When I say data cell, I mean data cell as opposed to a header cell. All right. So actually, before I go any further, I want to go over here to Properties, and would you make sure that your formula bar is displayed? And if it's not, like, I go over here to Properties, View, formula bar is highlighted, so it's in blue. Yeah, I want to make sure that I can see it, and I'd also recommend make sure you can see your report tabs and your status bar down at the bottom. Status bar tells you your zoom, page numbers, when was the last time you refreshed this. But if I click on sales revenue on the header, it shows me it's a formula. The formula is name of sales revenue. So it's the name of that particular object or field. If I click below that, it's just sales revenue, right? So it's going to bring in all the values for sales revenue based on the query I created. So if I click on a data cell, a right click, and I do insert sum, it's actually a toggle. So I had a sum on here, now it's gone. I'm going to put it back. And the options it gives me are actually contextual. So if I can put a sum here. If I do a right click on New York and do insert, it's not going to give me an option for a sum because you can't sum New York. You can count it, you can do a minimum maximum value, but you can't sum it, so it knows that. So that's kind of nice. All right. I'm going to hit save. But, oh, where'd my save button go? I was in properties. I have to go back to file and click save. All right. Sorting. So if I go to sales revenue, do a right click, sort, put ascending, and then let's say I go to state and put a sort and it's descending. Well, that's not going to do a whole lot because the primary sort is on sales revenue. So I can do another right click and go into advanced, and then I can manage my sorts. So really I want state to be first. And you can do a custom order. I have to admit that the custom order is a little buggy, so once you do a custom sort, it's a little hard to make it go away. So I'm not going to recommend that. Alright, so now I've got a descending sort on state, and then within that, see, within New York, I've got a ascending sort on sales revenue. And then I can do a right click and remove all the sorts. By default, it sorts based on column order. Right? So if I don't put any sorts, it's going to sort on the first column and then the second column. Now, let's create a variable. So you can create formulas in business objects. What's the difference between a formula and a variable? A variable has a name, and it's reusable. It's easy to reuse it. So we've got sales revenue, we've got quantity sold. Let's go into available objects, and over here we got variables. So if I do a right click and click new, that's one way to do it. So I'm going to call it quantity sold. No, I'm going to call it something else. I'm going to call it average price. Yes, there we go. It's probably going to figure out that it's a calculation, but I'm just going to make it a measure object with that little ruler. And under here we have, it gives you some help. It's a little tricky, but there's actually a whole document on formulas and variables that I uploaded into my link under the Business Objects resources. So I hope that'll help. But it's going to be sales revenue. So down here are the available objects. I'm going to double click it. When I double click it, it gives me the correct syntax. It has to start with an equal sign. If you do formulas in Excel, there's some similarities, but the syntax is different. Sales revenue, over here available operators, so I'll use the little / divide by, except I hit it too many times and I got 2. Sales revenue divided by quantity sold. I can give it a little check here, validate it to see if I did it right, but if I don't remember to do that, when I hit OK, it's going to check and see if I did it right. There it is, average price, and I can just drag it over here to insert a cell, and there it is. Okay. Now let's say I wanted to format it. So it's currency. If I do a right click, format cell, and number, let's say I want it to do the $sign and I want decimal points. I'm going to do that, and there we go. Let's take a quick look at report filters. So we talked about query filters. So if I put a query filter and I only say the color is red, I'm only going to get red things in my query. The other colors are not there. But a report filter, I can add it and remove it. So let's say I want to put a filter on state. There's multiple ways to do that, but one way is the old right click. Add a filter, state in list. Let's say I only want to see California and Colorado. Click OK, and that's all I got. Now, if somebody else sent me a query, how do I know if they got any filters? That's when it's handy to go to Document Structure and Filters. So right here, here's the table, vertical table, click the plus sign. Oh, it tells me I got a filter, and it even tells me what the values are. So it's a filter on state. And if I do a right click, I can remove it, or I could edit it. I could also go back here and do filter. Oh, I thought it would let me. Oh, I have to do it where it is. It's on state. So filter, remove filter. Are you sure? Yes, I am sure. Okay, it's gone. And if I wanted to put a filter on a number, I can do it in a different way. So if I put a filter on a number, quantity sold, I could do less than 440. What would I do? I guess I actually want a greater than 440. Okay, and there we go. And here it is. I want to get rid of it. There I go. So the great thing about filters is that, see down here you've got tabs like an Excel worksheet. You can have multiple report tabs and you can filter them in different ways. So maybe you have a query you want to share with different people in your department. They want to see it in a different way. You can add a filter to one tab and not another. Alright, so I'm going to move on to I want to create a sectioned report, a break report, and then a cross-table report. And then I want to show you how to use the delimiter to create grouped variables and just a quick review of scheduling a report. Alright, so if I do a right click on this, I can duplicate this report. So I'm going to call this, I'm going to rename it, and I'm going to call it raw data. Alright, so I'm going to go here, I'm going to rename it, I can double click or right click, and I'm going to call it sectioned report. Now, if I want to section it, I'm going to do a section on state. So I do a right click, set as section. See how that works. Why is Texas first? I think Texas is first because I was messing around with a custom sort and I couldn't get rid of it. Let's see. But anyway, what you see is that I have a section for each and I can get subtotals. It doesn't automatically give me a grand total, but I could put one down at the bottom. Now, if I want to format this sectioned report, I'd probably recommend going into structure only, right up here. And let's say, I want to make the table a little bit closer. I want this to be, I could make it smaller. If I want to look at the whole thing, I want more space between the different sections. Then I go back into design mode, and those changes will be made. And then I can also do a right click, format section, and I have other options like maybe I want to avoid page breaks in a section. So I'll put that. And then if I go down here to page mode, that'll show me that and I'll go to the next page, and that doesn't look good, but I guess I made it a little bit too wide. Yeah, I did. So I could fix that, but it's showing me that there are no page breaks in the middle of a section, which is what I wanted. Alright, so that's one way of getting subtotals on your data. Let's go on to break reports. I'm going to duplicate this raw data report. I'm going to rename it, call it a break report. And I actually want this to come before so I can move it previous. So see how I did that? So raw data is last. Alright, so I'm going to put a break on state. It's right up here, so I could do that, or I can just do a right click, break, add break. Now the thing about a break report is it doesn't pull that cell out as a separate cell. If I go down to the bottom of the whole thing, you'll see that I got a grand total. Why don't I have a subtotal for sales revenue? Well, that's because I inserted the calculation and then I applied the break. So I actually just have to go back to insert sum. It's a toggle, so it took it off, put it back. And so now I got subtotals and I got a grand total. Now here's kind of a cool trick, which is the outline function. Thank you. It's under analysis, right? Analysis, interact, show outline. This can be really handy. So now you see I've got some options over here. So if I just down here that says break on state, so if I click that, it's only going to give me the subtotals and the grand total. Sometimes that is the best way to get the information you need, and I can do additional formatting. So if I go to breaks, manage breaks, I can turn off that header so that I don't see the header for every break, right? And then I could click on the table. See, I got a little 4-directional arrow, and I could do a format table and put on the table header under general. And yeah, that's pretty nice, and I could do some things to hide those columns too. But that's just some of your options, and you can actually do outline with sectioned reports as well. And the last thing I want to do before I go on to another feature is how to create a cross table. So the thing about a lot of people run reports in Business Objects and they just download them to Excel, which you can do right over here. Export document as Excel, or even just the current report tab as Excel. But I'm a fan of setting things up in Business Objects so you don't really have to go to Excel. Why? Because then you don't have to format it. All you have to do is refresh it. You got the current data and your format is the way you wanted it. So let me just show you how to create a cross table. This time I'm going to add a report. And it's going to be a cross table, or a pivot table is might be how you know it. And I'm going to go to, where is it? Report elements, tables. Here we go. Define cross table. Click it. And let's see. Column is going to be year. Row is going to be store name. And then the body you need to have a calculation. So that's going to be sales revenue. There we go. So, and I could even switch them, right? So that could be real handy. And you can also create charts. I'm not going to go into that right now. But any questions before I move on to my next trick? Can it handle large amounts of data? Yeah.
Tamara asks, for sensitive data not housed in the DW, do these functions work the same when data is imported in as in Excel?
Okay, so if you're bringing in an Excel spreadsheet, first of all, you would need to switch to the Java applet. I believe. Yeah, same functions work. I'm going to move on. You're welcome. All right, so I want to show you, Douglas Hovey in FinOps did something. It's a beautiful thing that Doug did. And so if you go to maze.umich.edu and you go to reporting projects, you have to dig a little. Business Objects, Business Objects User Forum, which I hope you've joined. Here's the good old delimiter macro. I couldn't figure out where else to put this. So it's an Excel macro that allows you to do two things that are pretty handy in Business Objects. So Doug has some nice documentation. We actually made a little video. It was a while back, but 8 years ago, is that true? It's still relevant. And there's full instructions. So I've done this, and I just want to show you. So in Excel, I'm about to show you, Denise. It does two things. It allows you to paste a list of values. So here's a list of values. So let's say I knew that every time I had a long list of values and I wanted to be able to paste them into a prompt. I could have them in my Excel spreadsheet, and I could, once I've got the download and it's under add-ins, and the web page will tell you all about how to install it, and you might need help from your desktop folks to give you access. But this SQL is going to copy everything in that list, and I can tell it, do I want it to be delimited by a semicolon or a comma? In this case, I want it to be a semicolon. So see, I just typed that in and automatically put it in there. I'm going to copy it. So when I go back to Business Objects, and let's say I open Store Revenue, and that was category. Okay, so I'm here. Oops. I'm in Store Revenue, and I refresh it, except I need to edit it. So I got category happening. So let's see, where are we here? Product, category, in list, prompt. So if I run it, and I go to category, and I just copied that list, I'm going to paste it in there and then hit this, and it adds it. It adds that whole list, and I click OK, and everything's groovy. So that's a real handy feature. In some cases, you might find that creating a subquery does the same thing, but that's a little more advanced. So here's the amazing thing that I find, which is glad to hear that. And let's say I've got a list, so I exported a Business Objects report, just a single column to get these values on state. Let's say that I want to categorize them. I want to group them in a different way. I can use the delimiter. See this little thingy, the little group icon? It's going to create an if-then-else statement for me, and those are a pain to create in Business Objects because those formulas, again, are very particular. So I'm going to put the title, and I'm going to call it region, and I'm just going to go through here. So California, I'm going to call that West. I'm going to call Colorado West. DC, I'm going to call East. Florida, South. Illinois, Midwest. Massachusetts, East. New York, East. Texas, South. Okay, and then if I want to create a blank where this is blank and create a bucket for other, I can do that. Alright, so here's where the magic happens. I hope I can make it work correctly. Let's see. So what I want to do is, I think I want to select all that. And let's see. Highlight the values in 1 and 2. Yep. Click this. Copy complete. Go back to Business Objects. Where did I go? Where's my thingy? And here I am. Got a blank, nice blank. Go into design mode. And I'm going to paste this into the formula bar. Look at that. All right. And, you know, if I look at that in here, it's if state enlist California, Colorado, then call it West. If state enlist DC, call it East. So you can see the logic of it, but just look at all the parentheses and semicolons. So it's kind of tricky to do on your own. And then I can go right here and I can, let's see, oh yeah, I can click here and I can make it a variable. And I'm just going to call it region. And then it's going to show up over here and I can use it elsewhere. Anyway, so I like that a lot. And the only other thing I was going to go over was a quick review of scheduling, but we're kind of running out of time. So what I want to do is just direct you to some handy-dandy resources. So if I go into my link and click on Business Objects, or, you know, search on Business Objects, I'll get this whole web page that we put together, and it's all updated for the upgrade. And if I go to Schedule Reports, not only do we have a document, we've got a guided simulation to take you through the whole process. And if you're scheduling financial reports to run regularly, there's a whole thing on, like, there are objects in the financials data set called month-end close and today and for different periods. And you can really make those just do their own thing and run monthly reports. So I would really encourage you to check that out. So I'm going to go back and stop sharing. And if you have more questions, there's still time to ask them. Just I was trying to keep it to 45 minutes. So we did our agenda, simple query, basic formatting. We didn't get to charts. I have to do that next time. Scheduling, the delimiter. This document over here, and I will send this out too, has the scenarios that I went over. And you can use that demo universe that everybody's got access to. Here's the link to Business Objects resources and my link, and again I'll send that out, the practice scenarios. If you're not in the Business Objects user forum, I hope that you will join, and people have been really very good about responding to questions. We will upload this and caption it and put it on our YouTube playlist. If you don't get announcements about IT4U episodes, here's where you could sign up. And thank you very much. We're going to stop recording and go to the polls.